immigrant citizens, immigrant voters, foreign-born voters have gone tremendously to the right on this issue in 2024 and 2025 versus where they were in 2020. Closest to or trust more in immigration. You go back to 2020. Democrats, get this, held a 32-point lead on this issue. Immigrant voters were in the Democratic camp. Jump forward to 2024, 2025. Look at that shift, a 40-point shift to the right among immigrant voters. Republicans now lead on this issue by 8 points over Democrats, more so than any other group that I could find. The group of voters who became more hawkish on immigration were in fact immigrants themselves, immigrants who are registered to vote in this country.
Hi, and welcome to Editorial Spanglish. And we've got today with us Damaris, Perez, and Laura Waters. Great to have you guys join us.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Can you believe
Thank you.
Can you believe what we just saw? I love this guy who does all the polling on CNN. He's just hilarious. But what he was talking about with immigrant, foreign-born voters who are foreign-born, they have shifted 40 points to the Republicans on the immigration issue. Does that surprise you two at all?
It surprised me a little bit, but not truly, because I think that a lot of the people who did come here and they're foreign born, they left something behind and that followed them. So a lot of people, what I mean by that is they came to look for a better life, to work, but they saw that what they were leaving behind was now following them to the U.S., given Joe Biden's open border policies. So a lot of the people that didn't work, that didn't have the right intention to come here, got here, and they know that firsthand because they know what that looks like and they lived it, and that's what they were escaping. So I'm not surprised. But I'm a little bit surprised.
And
What do you
I
think,
would
Laura?
say that I'm not surprised because being an immigrant myself, we didn't get a free pass. We had to spend a lot of money, a lot of legal expenses, attorney's fees. We had to wait a long time to do everything legally. So to see, for those of us who have migrated to this country the right way, we did the right things. We filled out the paperwork. And then to see people get a free pass, we feel like it's not fair for those that are just coming across the border and getting, cell phones and Medicaid and all this stuff. We didn't get that. So for those of us who did it the right way, it's almost like, where are we? You know what I mean? So I feel like legal immigrants do feel like they've gotten the short end of the stick, for sure.
And if you think about it too, a foreign-born American citizen has as much to lose as an American-born citizen, right?
Right.
It's the same tax dollars being spent, whether you're a foreign-born person or a domestically born person. It's the same benefits that are getting shared across the board, costing you more money, causing services to deteriorate. Another thing too, I'd love to get your opinions on this. I saw a video clip on YouTube a while back, and it was an older gentleman who had immigrated to the United States from Mexico. He lives in Los Angeles, and he was talking about all the upheaval that we're seeing in Los Angeles now. And one of the things that he brought up was, he said, look, he goes, my parents and myself and my siblings, we came to this country, we saw opportunity. We were grateful for the opportunity. They said they worked very low-end labor jobs to start off with, but we knew we could work our way up. His father and his uncle started getting into the restaurant business. They learned the business. Then they started their own restaurants. Then they became highly successful. Their children went to college, graduated, got all these wonderful jobs. And they said, we love the United States of America. We cherish that flag. And what irritated him the most was in Los Angeles, you have these people now who have come across the border and they're waving the Mexican flag.
Mhm.
Like all of a sudden we are now supposed to heel to the Mexican government or the Mexican way of life, or they're forcing it in us. And his frustration was they're not appreciating what the value of being in the United States means. Do you all kind of see anything in that?
Oh, for sure. My own story, Puerto Ricans obviously are citizens, right? But well, a lot of people don't understand that part of the Puerto Rican story is people like my father. My father came here when he was 14, and he worked on a migrant farm. So he was picking cranberries in Ohio, I think it was, him and his brothers. And that's a migrant story. They get paid very little. They're doing the jobs that Americans wouldn't do, but they're Americans. So, like Laura said, you come here the right way, you do the right things, and you do those really bad jobs because you want a better future for your children. You're like, I'll pick the strawberries, I'll pick the cranberries, but my children won't. They'll go to college, they'll have a better life. But when you come and you get a gift, you get a food stamp card, and you get to stay in a hotel, and you get 3 square meals, and you're like, wait, I came here and worked and picked cranberries so the next guy can come and get a free food card.
Mm,
I think that's where you got a lot of the shift here.
yes.
And
Yeah.
nobody put you up in a hotel when you come over either. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And even then, we still feel privileged. Like, we're like, this is the best thing that ever happened to us, is that dad got to work on a field, doing this so that we didn't have to live the way many other Puerto Ricans have to live, so we can get an education. And we still look at it as a good thing. And what you saw, I don't know if you would catch the news, a lot of those immigrants, they were complaining. They were like, we're not getting this and we're not getting that. We're like, nobody else did either, buddy. So yeah, the shift is very, very palpable in the community. Absolutely.
What
I
do you
mean,
think, Laura?
when you come here, the whole purpose is for you to assimilate to the culture and to be grateful for this. Like, I don't know if you guys watch Arnold Schwarzenegger on The View. I mean, I don't watch that show, but definitely the clips. But, as he was saying, we're guests here and we should behave as such. And I'm a naturalized citizen, but I'm so grateful. I'm proud of being Colombian, but I'm so proud of being American because this nation granted us opportunities that we would have never had in Colombia. And those of us who left our countries is because we want a better life here. But these people are coming here complaining about the country, complaining about America, burning the flag. And it's almost like, so why are you here? Why not just go back to the country whose flag you're waving? It's so frustrating because it's almost like the appreciation, the gratitude for how generous this country is like almost lost in this whole new generation that is coming. And that's not what it's about. Yes. And it's almost like it's like it's a right. Like they have a right to be here. They have a right to demand things. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege that you're here. And it seems like it it's this ungrateful attitude about it. Which
Laura, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Do you think that this is just my own because I wonder, and I travel and I always like to talk to people about politics in any country I'm in, whether it is Colombia or Mexico. Do you get the feeling that these people that are these protesters aren't wanted in Mexico or Colombia? Or I always have the strong feeling that when I visit these countries, they're not very fond of a lot of the people who are Americanized Mexicans that were born in America, because these are the ones protesting, honestly. Were born in America, barely speak Spanish. They're not that welcome in their own country, and neither are these tactics. That's kind of the feel I get. I don't have like evidence for it, but I'm like, you're complaining and you're fighting for somebody that doesn't even want to fight for you, honestly,
Mhm.
or doesn't want you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost that feeling of either the way the propaganda, the way it was spoken about in that time during, the Biden administration, that it was like a free for all, anybody come. You get people that are coming here, yes, not fleeing from, yes, some may be fleeing from persecution or what may be, but some of them, they're just not coming from good, how would I say?
Motives.
Yeah,
Motives.
they don't have good intentions. They're not coming for that American dream. It's almost like they're fleeing from jail or, something in their own country, and they're coming here almost demanding to be spoon fed. And most of us who've come the right way, we saw how hard it was. My parents washed dishes, clean houses, also that we would have a good life, a good education, and so that we didn't have to do those things. But I saw how hard they worked to get us here. I saw how hard it was for us to even come here. We didn't have a hotel. We came and we had nowhere to stay. If we didn't have family, we would have been, out on the street or sleeping in a car, right? And so because we had it harder, we appreciate how hard it was. We appreciate the gift that it was, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hey, look, let's talk about where they may be getting these things from. There's a lot of leftist Marxist type thinking in the United States, and nowhere is that more present than in Hollywood, right? And just recently, actor Kara Sedgwick, that's Kevin Bacon's wife. Kara starred in that TV series. I think it was on the Turner Network. It was called The Closer. It was a police drama. Um, and she had made some statements, and of course they went all over the internet. I'd love to read you some of these things that she said. She says, "I'm wondering how you're feeling about the state of our union. I'm finding myself pretty scared about a lot of things. Scared about losing my rights as a woman. Scared about losing my right to vote as a woman. Scared about losing autonomy over my body as a woman." Okay, you two are the women on the panel. Are you terrified? I mean, are you afraid you're going to lose everything that she's complaining about?
Gosh, I'd hate to get racial, but I almost feel like it's like a white woman thing. I mean, I honestly, it's like, what kind of privilege do you have that you actually feel that now somebody is taking it from you? Because no one's tried to take anything from me. So I do not comprehend. And a lot of these liberals, these Hollywood liberals and these women out here and um the protesters, if you look at them, a lot of them are middle-aged white women who are actually some of the most privileged people in our society, complaining the hardest and being the most afraid of whatever they perceive is going on. And I don't even understand it. I'm like, I tried to explain it. I just don't understand why.
Well, you
I
know,
mean,
too, there, well, let me say, there's something called, there's a little phrase, it's called confession through projection, right? So whatever you're blaming somebody else of doing, you're actually doing yourself. And I think this is a really good case of it. Go ahead, Laura.
no, I mean, last I checked, I don't know of any other female uh, that has lost any other rights that they had November 5th that they did November 6th. Like, I can still go out and about the same way I could. I can still, in some blue states, you can definitely still get some late term abortion. So that is, again, all the propaganda that they want to scare people. And the people who listen to this are scared because they think that their rights are being taken away. And I mean, I don't know of anyone that can't vote if you're still a legal citizen of the United States.
Well, I always am fascinated by the Kara Sedgwicks of this world are complaining that they're losing their rights, but yet they're the same ones who absolutely say, censor that person. Don't let them say those words. Don't let them issue their thoughts. Call everything they're saying, disinformation. Call them a racist if they say something we don't like, to try to beat them back, or a fascist to try to get them back into submission. They're the same people who, you know, demand that we use the voting machines, even though their experts admit that they could be hacked, right? So, the whole thing with the vaccine, for example, was a perfect case where you've got this experimental vaccine, and it was labeled experimental, but yet you've got to have it or you're going to kill all of us. But yet she's saying she's worried about keeping her bodily autonomy, but I'm going to force the jab on you, but I'm worried about my bodily autonomy. It just, Makes no sense.
That's
And what do you think
just
about the
rude.
Hollywood scene?
No, I just think it's just so hypocritical that Hollywood has spent so much time warning us about the dangers of Trump and, the dangers to our democracy. But where were they with Epstein and Weinstein and Diddy and now Tyler Perry? Like, why are these people not warning us about all these other predators that are out there in the Hollywood industry? So it's like they have no room to talk about morality or warning us about who's dangerous when they don't speak up when they should.
Yeah, we had
What?
Jennifer Lopez out on the trail with Kamala, and I'm like, you do understand you spent quite a bit of time with Diddy, and that it's are they unaware? I mean, I don't know if it's lack of awareness or just really purposeful because
Or they
it
think we're
makes no
that dumb.
sense.
They think
Or
we
that.
have forgotten.
That's what it is.
And we do have a two-tier society. There's no doubt about it. There's rules for the bulk of us, and then there's a separate set of rules for them. They
Uh-huh.
complain about climate change and, oh, you're destroying the planet. It's all your fault. But they fly private jets everywhere they go, which pollutes more than my automobile pollution for my entire lifetime will create one trip. They committed that much pollution. So it's like, they always try to put it on everybody else. And that's why they come up with that confession through projection type of thing. It's just, and I think people aren't falling for it. I think that's why the Democrats are losing the younger adult generation because they see through it and they're no longer willing to put up with that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Not John, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is his health guru on the Trump administration, came forward and just started really talking about why we needed to pull out of the WHO. And Damaris, you want to give us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So like RFK has stated, basically the World Health Organization has just become a political tool. It's no longer I don't know if it ever was really servicing the world and the globe when it comes to health crises, but it's just a political tool, and in this case it really went to favor China and China's policy and China's narrative on the origin of COVID, which is really, I don't know, I guess maybe this is veering a little bit off, but it really still floors me even today that we fell for it. Okay. And we fell for it because of organizations like the World Health Organization, who told us that it didn't come out of Wuhan. And the interesting part about it is we fund most of the funding for the World Health Organization, yet China gets to direct its policy.
Uh-huh.
Um, and there were so many failures, and I think what we forget, and something the left does very well, is that they kept showing us the numbers of the people who died in America from COVID and how it disproportionately hit Black Americans and Latino Americans and poor Americans, and yet they get to just forget all about that. And I feel that's something that we should be talking about. Look, this is what China's narrative is and has influenced the World Health Organization, and we lost these people because nobody wanted to say that this came from China except Donald Trump. He was the only one that was like China, and everybody else was like, oh no, this is just so. The fact that we have allowed and kind of given up a little bit of our, I feel like our sovereignty almost, to say let them tell the narrative and we pay for it. We pay for the lie. We pay for most of the World Health Organization's funds. I think it's the right thing, and I'm glad he did it first, and his first day in office or second day in office, because everything should be America first, and the World Health Organization is not America first or second or third.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You
It
know,
lost
being
its
the head of the
accountability too.
right, and being the head of the FDA, he has quite a bit of power. And I'll just give you some of this. I took some lines from his speech that he gave when he was condemning the WHO. And this is what I love about Kennedy. I like this about Trump. They don't sugarcoat it. They don't try to get over overly diplomatic with it. This is RFK Jr. He said that the WHO had become a tool of politics. It turned its back on health and health security.
Yep.
He said this all became obvious during the COVID pandemic when the WHO, under pressure from China, suppressed critical reports at critical junctures. And then he goes on to talk about this pandemic agreement that all these other nations have signed. The United States has not. Trump would refuse to do it. But he says of this pandemic agreement, it's going to lock in all the dysfunctions of the 2020 WHO response. And so they are not only going to have more control over those governments and how they respond, but it's essentially locking in the same dysfunctional type of management and execution that they had in 2020. Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there it goes. We've already seen a trial run of it. We already saw what they did. And, unfortunately, I feel like Trump had the wrong people speaking into him during that time. So he listened to bad advice when it came to shutting down the country. And as much as he tried to say it was a China virus, here we are 5 years later, that no one's been held accountable for where it came from, how poorly it was handled. And so what I personally would like to see is some accountability for that, how badly it was handled. I mean, even though he was pardoned, will we ever see how corrupt Fauci was, how much behind all of the funding he was, the gain of function funding and all that stuff, and how corrupt he's been, not just during COVID, but many decades before. And RFK was one to point that out many years ago. So hopefully we get to see more transparency. Will anybody go to jail? Will anybody be held accountable? I don't know. I mean, what's frustrating with Washington is that you see all these hearings, but nothing happens. So what we'd like to see is somebody actually, paying a price for the corruption and the evil.
RFK Jr. actually wrote a book on Fauci. It was a bestseller.
Yep.
And RFK dared Anthony Fauci to sue him for slander or libel or whatever it was. He said, come after me. He goes, I have footnoted everything that's in this book. I stand by it. If you think I've done something wrong, you come sue me. Fauci never uttered a word about that book and still has it to this day, which I find, very interesting. But that's one of the things, Laura, that I really agree with you. The fact that there is no one held accountable for any of this stuff, the misinformation, when the FDA was talking about ivermectin that had been prescribed over 1 billion times to human beings all over the globe, one of the most effective drugs and also one of the least harmful drugs in terms of side effects. And the FDA comes out with social media posts saying it's a veterinary medicine and you shouldn't be using it. It's for horses.
Mm-hmm.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And there were a lot of other treatments, which still floors me, that I'm not saying they were going to cure COVID, but what I saw all these commercials. I never saw something as simple as up your vitamin D, up your zinc, which it was crucial. Most of the people who did die had a deficiency in some of those vitamins. So there was one narrative and one narrative only, and so many people died, and I believe unnecessarily, because we went with whatever China told us to do, and Fauci.
And how many people were censored? How many doctors were censored when they spoke up about it, when they were saying they were treating patients and not seeing results with what was recommended by, the World Health Organization? And what happened with all of that? We didn't see anything about what happened with those people who were unfairly shut down. Their practices were closed because they were trying to do it the natural way.
Well, and the saddest part is when Congress gives the big pharma companies total immunity, okay, why then would they ever feel compelled to do the proper studies, do the proper testing, and then make it public notice if there are harmful side effects with an experimental vaccine, which gives them even more immunity? What's their incentive to do anything the right way when you've got total immunity?
Right.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's one of the big problems that we have.
Mhm.
And the fact that people in the NIH and the other parts of the federal government can actually collect stipends and royalties on drug related products that they're supposed to be regulating. And I'm like, what is wrong with this picture?
Mhm.
But that's the system we have. And up to this point, that has not been changed. What do you think about RFK Jr.? Give us, is he doing a good job? Is he getting it done? Or is the job harder than you think he thought it would be? Or what do you think? Damaris, go ahead.
I think he knows and he knew what he was getting into because he's been in this a long time. And he, like you said, he wrote the book and he knows the beast he's facing, which is why he's been ostracized from his own party and even his own family. So it's not that he didn't know. I think it's harder probably to get it done because when you start talking about some of the things RFK is talking about, you sound like you're way deep in the woods. It sounds like, okay, now you're just a little, yeah, that's a little kooky, right? And even when you were talking about it, I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, a lot of people think this is kooky. We live in a world of information, and this information doesn't seem realistic. That's how bad it really is. So it is hard because America is obsessed with being sick, I think, and they want all the medicine. The pharma companies have done a very good job at convincing people that they need everything that they can possibly get on. So I think it's more than just a policy. It's the influence and the culture.
Yep. And I
What's your
mean,
thoughts on RFK, Laura?
no, I was just going to say the money is in sick care. It's not in healthcare. And if you go back when one of the things I admire most about RFK, um, I don't agree with him on his abortion stance, but one of the things I admire about him is that he fought hard and to defend uh, families who were vaccine injured, and that's one thing. I mean, he will teach you just in 10 minutes of talking to him. I don't know if you ever saw him debating uh, the Jewish attorney. What is his name? But when they were talking about vaccines, and he was very like pro the COVID vaccine. But it was great to see their debate because all he had to do was just lay out the facts for him, just to let him know, hey, there is no reason why we shouldn't be questioning this because there are people who have been injured. There have been people who I personally know people who've been injured right then and there, right after the vaccine. And so why not research it more? So his work on that, and I'm pretty sure he got there and realized, gosh, this is a cesspool of corruption. So it's probably which same thing with Cash Patel. Like they get in there, they have all great intentions, but it's deeply rooted, and to get all that out, it's going to take some time. But
Bump.
bless them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing I will say for RFK, he's got some good accompanying cast, let's just say. Jay Bhattacharya, who's the NIH director, loved the guy, Stanford University, stood up for what was right during the COVID thing. He absolutely was right on every stand he took. Dr. McCary from Johns Hopkins University, a preeminent researcher at Johns Hopkins Medical School. He's working on the vaccine part of it and stuff. So I think of all the people in all the different departments and agencies, he's probably got the best supporting cast of all of them. So hopefully they're going to do what they need to do. Somebody's going to be held accountable eventually, and we'll all live happily ever after as a nation because of it. I know one thing he's going after is big pharma advertising on television, and radio.
Yep.
Now, there are some televisions, and this will show you why the television news is slanted the way it is. Some television stations and networks have already come out and said, if you restrict the big pharma advertising, we'll go bankrupt. We can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That probably explains why you never heard a lot of negative press on anything to do with big pharma related issues. You know,
Why all
you'd
the
almost
networks push so hard for the COVID vaccine, because
right,
it was
right.
all beneficial to all of them. They were all gaining
Mhm.
lots of money on it.
And why prescriptions are so expensive in America. And you go to a foreign country, and number one, you do not see not a single ad for drugs.
Mhm.
And number two, you can buy them all over the counter. And number three, they're dirt cheap.
Yep.
Right, right. Well, let's shade a little bit. We've gone into research in terms of pharmaceuticals. Harvard University does a lot of that research. They do a lot of research across the board on a lot of different subjects, but medical research is they're renowned for. They had a couple of researchers they actually got arrested who they found out were doing work for the Chinese Communist government. They were taken into custody and they're being prosecuted for doing this work. They have to report these types of things if they're doing it, especially if it's in a sensitive area that of national interest or security. And so they've already done that. Then you had Harvard coming out and they were discriminating against Asians, whites, and then lately Jewish students who they were preventing from going to class and harassing because of the Israeli Gaza Palestinian situation. They got in trouble for that. They lost a Supreme Court judgment on Asian students and preventing them from admissions based on race, which is exactly what they were doing. And now what we're seeing is they're looking at the Chinese student visas in total now. And what they're finding out is a lot of these Chinese students have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Some of them are actually in the Chinese military and they're coming here. Xi Jinping, Chinese leader, his daughter is going to school at Harvard. So what we've got to be wondering now is, are we educating the enemy? What do you think, Laura?
Well, in order to get a student visa, you have to go through the U.S. Immigration Services. So whoever's letting these people in and giving them these visas should also be held accountable, because they're also getting some benefits, some kickbacks from that, I believe. And I mean, look at all these universities. They've become like a cesspool of these socialist bodies of student bodies that are protesting against America. And so it's become a culture in all these major Ivy League schools. But somebody's letting them in, so somebody else is getting a kickback too, I believe.
You have to wonder, why wasn't the State Department looking into this? I mean, why does the Trump administration easily find out that these people have ties to the Chinese Communist Party, have ties to the Chinese military, and the Biden administration couldn't do that? The Obama administration couldn't do that? The Bush administration couldn't do that? I mean, of course, the Chinese Communist government is renowned for stealing trade secrets and intellectual property. We're just giving it to them. We're putting them right in the lab, getting the latest cutting edge technology and scientific discoveries that we have, and they're sending them straight through. Now, the inverse is also true, that some of the people coming in on these visas, we just had one recently, I believe it was the University of Michigan, where the Chinese, I think it was a visiting professor or a graduate student. I don't know what the situation was there, but they were coming in and they had brought this biological fungus with them that would have destroyed the crops in the United States. By the grace of God, Customs caught this? What if they didn't? Why aren't we vetting these people to find out who they're talking to and what associations they have in communist nations? Damaris, you want to comment on it at all?
I feel like it's a little bit more nefarious than that. I think they do know, they did know, and it's all part of bringing America to its knees and making America understand that they are not the rulers of the world, and that we must be like everyone else or less than. I honestly do not feel at all that this went under the radar. It didn't go under the radar any more than the balloons that the Chinese were flying when Joe Biden was president. So it is not it is not an oversight at all. I think it's truly intentional.
Well, Harvard, we all know Harvard has this massive endowment, right? Just billions and billions and billions of dollars. But yet they're getting all this federal government money. Should they be using their own endowment money? Why do we allow them to keep building that massive fund that they have, and yet we're in debt by $38 trillion in the United States, and we're giving them a massive amount of taxpayer dollars? Is it fair?
And it's what they say. Okay, wait, Harvard, the average American cannot send their child to Harvard. Your child, no matter how smart they are, if they're not politically aligned in the correct way, they're not going to Harvard either. In my city, in Milwaukee, and granted I don't live there anymore, but the 3% of the children in fourth grade were reading at proficient levels. So that's actually just devastating. Fourth grade, inner city, mostly Black children cannot read. And you're worried, and the average American, if you poll them, they're worried about whether we're sending money to Harvard or not when they have their own money. We truly are just led by the news. And it's sad. Harvard does not need a single dime from us ever again. If America made it to another 250 years, they would never need another dime from us. They have enough money and they support each other. It's insane.
Well,
I
they
guess my
talk
question
about,
is why? Why do these universities get government funding?
I think it's for or at least what I've heard is it's for research, for medical research is some of the money.
yeah, they have a lot of different things for research. It's the climate change stuff, the medicine, all types of research, even the defense industry. They do research for the defense industry, developing new types of weaponry and whatever. Some of it is in the interest of the United States. We benefit from that as a country. They might introduce a new technology. The internet, for example, came out of the DARPA program through the Defense Department. Google was, formerly with the Central Intelligence Agency. It came through that agency. So there are some benefits to having some of that money into research. I think the problem to ask is, where do you draw the line? When that university has, tens and tens of billions of dollars in endowment, and they keep growing that endowment, and they use that endowment as leverage, like BlackRock does and everything else. If we're going to invest this money in your company, you've got to have pronouns, and you've got to have elect certain people, and you've got to rule out this type of language in the workplace. They use that leverage just like all the big firms do, the fintech firms do.
And what good is the research, the amazing research that they might be discovering if the Chinese have first access to it anyway? If it's
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You're giving it away. You're
Again,
giving it away.
educating the enemy.
yeah.
It's the WHO argument all over again. We pay pretty much for WHO to exist. The Chinese pay a minimal amount, and yet the Chinese control the WHO. Tell me how that works. Why do we as a government, keep allowing our government to always be the losers? Over and over and over again. I don't hold China responsible. I hold our government responsible.
Mhm.
We know
Absolutely.
what's going on.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Let's move on to this one. This is an interesting one. Mexico is suing gun manufacturers in the United States. And the gun manufacturers have asked the Supreme Court to quash a lawsuit brought by the Mexican government, which alleges that U.S. companies are liable for guns being used in violence committed by criminal cartels in Mexico. What do you think?
That is just bizarre. Like, first of all, the fact that another country is suing an American company over the illegal use of a firearm. Like, it doesn't, I don't know. I don't know how they'll rule on this, but that doesn't make sense to me. It's almost like you're blaming, you know, I don't even know what a good example for that would be, but it's just bizarre.
It really is. It's like I would have never expected to hear something like this. But shouldn't it be like isn't that your border problem where you have guns coming across your border through that's a Mexico problem. And if that's the case, then we should also start suing for all the cocaine and drugs that come through our borders from Mexico and sue them. So maybe it's a tit for tat, but that makes absolutely no sense. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and sue you for all the Mexicans, Colombians, and everybody who wants to cross, Chinese, Arabs that want to cross across the border from the Mexican border. Let's do this.
Right. I mean, the fact that it even made it to the Supreme Court is bizarre to me.
Exactly.
Well, the courts, lower courts, allowed this suit to keep going, so it had to go to the Supreme Court. But I find this interesting. This is your typical leftist Marxist argument.
Mhm.
The gun is responsible for killing somebody, not the person pulling the
criminal.
trigger, right? So you don't go after the people who are pulling the triggers and killing these people. And in Mexico, there is a lot of murder going on.
Mhm.
They find headless bodies and buried in mass graves. The cartels are ruthless. They'll kill anybody they want to on any day. There's a lot of murder going on.
And
But
the
the problem
Mexican
you have,
president did not want any U.S. assistance because she's afraid of the cartels. But then they
well,
want
and
to sue the gun manufacturers for
well,
the
they want
crime.
the money.
Yeah.
They want the money. It's not about principles, but you see all this mass murder going on in Mexico. It's not the gun's fault. It's the people who want to commit mass murder.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears. Let's get back into the United States again. Seattle, Washington. They have a history of the police being hogtied, not able to do anything. We saw that during the pandemic, where they literally allowed citizens to burn a police station to the ground. They took over several square blocks of the city, literally ruled over it, would not allow city officials or the police or anyone in the zone. And we were hoping that would all subside and go away. And just recently, there was a little bit of a positive note where they had a conservative Christian rally in Seattle, and they got bombarded by counter protesters. And the police actually took action and arrested 23 people, and it appears they're actually going to be prosecuted. That remains to be seen with their district attorney, because I think they have one of the Soros-funded district attorneys. So it remains to be seen if they'll actually be prosecuted. But the police actually appeared to do their job. They apprehended 23 people, took them off to the police station. And Laura, you got anything else on this you want to give us?
Yeah, so the rally actually took place at Seattle's Cal Anderson Park, which is in a very LGBTQ friendly neighborhood, QTXYZ neighborhood, right? And so, of course, but here's the thing. The organization, the Christian organization, it's called Mayday USA. They came together with what's called, I don't know if you guys have heard of Don't Mess with Our Kids. Now, this was a movement that began actually in South America of parents that were speaking up against all this sexualization in the schools of children. And it since started here in the US. I have actually been to several of their rallies. I went to one in Atlanta. I went to the big one that they had in Washington, D.C. in October. And really, it's just praise and worship and then prayer. And when we're there, we pray for the LGBTQ community. We pray for people who have suffered through the abortion, had abortions. It's just prayer, really. And it's just so that these communities can experience the love of Jesus. It's very peaceful, but they had actually petitioned the city to have it at a different park. But the parks department, the city council, denied them the what am I
The permit.
yeah,
Apartment, yeah.
finding the
Yeah.
permit at the park that they had petitioned for, and they gave them the permit for that specific park. Now, that was pretty intentional because they knew that that was going to create chaos. And of course, all these protesters came out and were violent with masks and, were doing what they do, exactly what we've been seeing, what we saw in this summer of love, what we're seeing right now in LA. So, but again, luckily this time the police did step in. They arrested those individuals, but the mayor came out and came and defended these violent protesters, even though there was no sign of any violence coming from anybody in the May Day USA organization. So yes, hopefully they will be prosecuted and the district attorney will, lay down the law. But it's sadly that that's the world that we live in now, that even prayer can be so offensive. Um, yeah.
And most of those people who were committing the violence, they're part of the Antifa movement, the Marxist group that goes in there and they foment violence in order to change and get people to submit to
Yes.
what they want and intimidate them to try to keep from protesting. Which the irony of it was, like you said, Laura, the city putting them in that specific park, knowing that there was a heavy LGBTQ community in there and a lot of Antifa presence and a lot of violence in the past, and they forced them into that venue.
And even the members of the community were like, somebody dropped the ball on this. But in my opinion, it was a very intentional error right there. They knew it would create chaos and they wanted to do that. And again, it's just scaring people into silence, scaring people into, it's just, you almost have to be brave to go out and pray in certain areas of our country, sadly. And when we are seeing religious persecution, and I definitely think that we are seeing very much Christian persecution, sadly, in our nation. So kudos to this organization for going in the lion's den and praying, even though it was hard.
Well, let me give you a statement that they made, the Mayday USA group. They said they refuse to stand idly by while the children of our nation are indoctrinated by a liberal, political, and sexual agenda that seeks to destroy their God given identities. And do you know what the people within the city and the Antifa groups call that statement? Fascist family values. That's
Mhm.
what they referred to it as,
Yeah.
which, that's what they do. They just keep projecting the fascist, the Hitler, the racist, all that stuff on people. And they try to say, they try to discourage you from doing it by destroying you as a person in public.
Yep.
Any comments, Damaris, on this one?
No, I just concur, and I honestly believe that it was completely intentional, and I think there's more of that going around in the country more than we think. Uh, a lot of these government agencies are truly just overrun by complete radical liberals, um, and it's intentional. It's not by accident. Um, for some reason in America, we've lost the ability to just say we disagree on things, and I don't want to participate in your little rally, but go ahead, have at it. That doesn't exist anymore. Now it's like, okay, well, let me see how I can sabotage your rally. Or, just what we had a rally. President Trump came to the arena here, the basketball arena, during campaign season, and it was a little bit chaotic to get in. It was less orderly than when he goes to the suburbs. And I know a few of the officers that were standing at the door. I said, well, this is so odd. And they said, you know what? The city said we can come, but we had to limit how many police officers were here. And we had to limit how many private security, because their city was not going to be overrun with private security goons. So it's intentional.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
intentional. They're wanting a lot of this to break out, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, let's go to somebody else who loves spreading the propaganda as well. Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders. He got caught, believe it or not, telling the truth on a social media program. Believe it or not, they caught him red-handed. They were having this was a kind of a left side of the spectrum social media broadcast. And I think Bernie let his guard down, and then they started accusing him, because Bernie has gone all over the United States complaining about the oligarchies, right? Those darn oligarchs, those nasty billionaires, those technocrats. He hates these people, right? Well, wait a minute. Bernie had to admit, when they were asked him, well, aren't these people funding all of your campaigns? Aren't these the people who are backing you? Aren't these the billionaires? Don't you have more billionaires by far funding your campaigns than the Republicans do? And here's what Bernie had to say. There in the 70s, 60s, Democrats caught on that you could raise a lot of money from wealthy people. And that is so. It's and it gets back to the campaign financing and all that stuff. I wish I could do a Bernie Sanders voice, but I can't. So you've got a Democratic establishment now, which is funded by wealthy people. You have consultants who are really way out of touch with reality, who make a whole lot of money in campaigns, and the working class is ignored. Donald Trump comes along and says, I care about you. Wow. For him to admit that, I mean, what do you got to say? He's finally come clean.
Does he know he came clean?
Yeah, I think that was like a Freudian slip.
I think he's embarrassed. And to admit that Donald Trump is the one who says to the working class, I care about you. I mean, it's just incredible. And then these people, the Bernie Sanders of this world, have the audacity to do a nationwide No Kings demonstration. And they are the kings.
They are the kings, and
They're funded by the kings. I mean, it's this confession through projection again. We're going to accuse the Republicans of all of these things, all of this money, getting all of this negative influence, and they are the ones that are getting it. And by the way, Bernie Sanders owns 3 very nice estates and has made quite a substantial fortune as a senator in Congress. So, if you're going to do a No Kings event, perhaps you should probably look at yourself in the mirror and see what's sitting on your shirt or what's in your closet before you go turning on other people.
didn't he say the other day when he was asked about maybe I'm mistaken, when he was asked about flying around a private jet, that he said he can't be running around in airports. I'm like, king.
Right. I mean, it's the exact same thing. It's the 2-tier, we're the elites and you're not. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the inaugural episode of Editorial Spanglish. We'll also have a version of this totally in Spanish, but we're getting the Latina perspective on a lot of the issues facing our nation. I hope you enjoy it, like it, subscribe, and share. We would love that. If you've got your Latino friends and your Latino friends, please share it with them. We'd love to get them in as subscribers, possibly even get them in on the show. And thanks for all you do. We appreciate all your support for editorialinterchange.net. If you've got any ideas, people we'd love to have as a speaker, go to editorialinterchange.net. We have a section on there where you can put your name and your email address and a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And don't hesitate to comment under the program as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.